All right, guys, my special guest tonight is Niko House. He's a commentator, an activist, a journalist, and much, much more. Niko, welcome back. It's been a minute.
It has. It really has. But, you know, I see you've been keeping busy. I see you've been definitely keeping busy. I'm glad to see it.
No, it's been a lot of things going on so far. There's been a lot of things happening this year.
But you look about 5 years younger. You look about 5 years younger. So apparently he's keeping you young, too. So that's good.
Oh, Niko, flattery will get you everywhere.
Black don't crack. Some stereotypes are true, and black don't crack. So it is what it is.
All right. So I've been wanting to talk to you about this for quite some time. Because we are entering the election season again, I think it's important to go back and remind people what the DNC said after Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential run, because now we have Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. primary challenging Joe Biden. I think you and I know they're not going to be fair towards those candidates.
Of course, it's expected. Yeah, not only not fair, like don't get me wrong. I definitely can appreciate the message that RFK is willing to bring in like a similar fashion that I appreciated Tulsi, but like it is probably even more cemented at this point. They are not going to allow either of them to even have close to a chance, especially when Marianne Williamson keeps unnecessarily shooting herself in the foot. So there's that. So, you know, I just don't, it's not going to happen. You know, not that they're not worthy candidates, it's just not going to happen.
That's right. So I want to remind people what happened after the 2016 election. Court concedes DNC had the right to rig the primaries against Bernie Sanders. So this is like, it's the elephant in the room, right, Niko? It's the fact that we have to be realistic here when we talk about people who are primary challenging someone in the Democratic Party, and those people are running on any type of progressive message whatsoever. If we go back, we have to remember when you look at a state like West Virginia, for example, where Bernie Sanders won every county in West Virginia. And at the end, the superdelegates still decided to give it to Hillary Clinton. And this is a challenge that I think anyone who's trying to do this progressive strategy through the Democratic Party, they are constantly going to run into this challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that, right? So first of all, the Observer, along with a lot of other news articles, actually purposely mischaracterized the results of that case. The courts never concluded that they have the right to rig their primary. That's actually not what was said. In fact, Judge Locke made it very clear, even though that he dismissed the case on jurisdictional issues, primarily. But he actually said in his final opinion that he does not recognize the trivialization of the DNC's charter, because remember, their main argument was that basically they didn't have to adhere to their charter. It was just kind of like suggestions rather than rules. And he said that he does not recognize the trivialization of their charter. But he said that it seems to be more so an issue of jurisdiction than anything else. Now, the superdelegate issue has not been resolved, exactly like you said. But there's even more than that. The fact that corporate entities, if you will, private entities, still are allowed to have control over voting machines that you or I have no access to without getting an audit, right? And what people don't know about these audits and don't seem to understand about these audits, and I told people the same thing about the Trump situation this past election in 2020. I said, it doesn't matter really whether or not you believe Trump won or whether or not you thought Joe Biden won. The problem is that we were really never allowed to find out. Everybody says, oh, Trump's cases were thrown out. They weren't thrown out. They were thrown out, and therefore they weren't legitimate. We don't know if they're legitimate because the federal positions of the U.S. attorney and federal judges are political. They are appointed positions. And so effectively, for them to have tried that case, they would have been challenging their next boss. People don't know. Bill Clinton fired a bunch of U.S. attorneys and federal judges that wouldn't go along with his cabal in the 90s when he was rigging the ATF, rigging the DEA, normalizing private prisons, etc. Like, that's a thing. There are people who wouldn't even come out and testify about some of the stuff that the Clintons did because that's how entrenched those judges have been in this system, and those are political positions. And so if you're a progressive and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go get an audit. I have the money. We have money to do. We raised it. We did everything right. If anybody who's been a lawyer knows, unfortunately, you can do everything right, but this court system, once it gets to a certain point, is extremely political, and we have yet to deal with that in any realistic way.
That's right. So it says here, in June 2016, a class action lawsuit was filed against the Democratic National Committee and former DNC chair Debbie Weiserman Schultz. I don't want people to forget about her, for violating the DNC Charter by rigging the Democratic presidential primaries for Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. And so Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid admitted in July 2016, everybody knew that this was not a fair deal, yet they allowed it to happen.
Mm-hmm. Remember, Elizabeth Warren admitted it. Tom Perez admitted it. I mean, the list goes on. They all knew. Well, I mean, and to be real, what pissed me off probably more than anything else is that Bernie knew he got cheated and didn't do anything about it.
Yep.
Right? So there's that part. That there is so for example, Marianne Williamson, we heard her talk a lot about how she was mistreated by the DNC last year. She was saying that she was being treated better by her Republican colleagues than Democratic colleagues. And yet, once the election concluded and she was still trying to maintain that Democratic clout, we saw her constantly throwing praise on Joe Biden, and now she's going to turn around and pretend as if she all of a sudden disagrees with all of his policies, when she kept saying that he was leaps and bounds better than Trump. And I mean, if we're going to be factually correct, he has not been better than Trump, which is saying a lot, because it actually wouldn't have been that difficult. It really wouldn't have. You just have to not start a new war and maybe not send the entire world's economy into a spiraling depression. But it wasn't hard or easy enough for Joe Biden. So it's not just the fact that we get cheated. It's the fact that some of the people who were cheated, outside of maybe Tulsi, they pretend like it never happened.
Yep.
And they raise money from poor people, and they spend that money again, knowing that they have done nothing effective to change this corrupt system, that they want us to go and vote again, like we didn't just see what happened the last two elections.
They never even bring it up. And this is the elephant in the room. Like, I'm sorry. I do know some people are very hopeful about Marianne or RFK Jr. I told people this before. I would support RFK Jr. if he ran as an independent, because I agree with him on a lot of the policies. Like, he's anti-war. I'm down with that kind of thing. But we have to address this particular issue. We have to address the super delegates issue. See, for the Republican Party, for people who are not aware, they don't have super delegates.
Yeah, or if they do, they do, but it's like a weird, basically the super delegates don't have anywhere near the power. Basically, they have them, but it's nothing like what the Democratic Party is, because they're just it's a party of I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a bunch of wolves, and once they find their quote unquote alpha, they just whatever, you won, fair, square, it is what it is. They cheated Ron Paul before, but they need super delegates to do it. They reduced his TV time, and they did everything they could that was in their power to reduce the amount of exposure he got. But they didn't literally take a state from him.
Right.
That's different territory that we're in.
But how do you feel about the fact that Bernie Sanders doesn't even call this out? Like, when Bernie ran in 2020, he didn't call this out. I was like, okay, maybe he's not going to say anything because he doesn't want to hurt his chances in this election for 2020.
It's weird to me, because I don't understand. Yeah, so even we know why he didn't say anything after. He got a very powerful position in the Senate where he's done absolutely nothing with. That's what happened after. But people would ask me, or people would tell me back during the 2020 election, why would you support Bernie Tulsi instead of Bernie? I was very clear. I'm like, well, if any of them win, I really don't care. Like, that's fine. Now I'm glad Bernie didn't win, because apparently he was just walking lockstep with the Democratic Party. But I would say, well, they said Bernie had such a great chance, right? He has so much of a better chance to win. And I said, no, he doesn't. He has the exact same amount of opportunity as Tulsi does. I don't care what the numbers say. They're like, what do you mean? I said, I have a question. Did the Democratic Party cheat last time? Everybody knows the answer is yes. Have we addressed that? No. Did Bernie address it? No. So they had the exact same amount of chances to win, which is effectively zero. I mean, if I'm being real, but the only difference is he's taking hundreds of millions of dollars from poor people and not calling the issue out. Tulsi, the reason I got behind her was because even though her chances were obviously slim to none, that was no different than Bernie, except for she introduced the Secure America's Elections Act. She introduced an amendment to bring parity back to media and honesty back to media and to hold people accountable in that regard. She challenged the Democratic Party. She told the truth about the wars that were happening. Like, she brought up consistently the DNC fraud lawsuit. Tulsi was the first and only congressman to talk to me. She called me whenever the lawsuit first started to figure out what was going on. And immediately after that is when she started putting together the Secure America's Elections Act. Like, it was a no-brainer for me because I knew, once again, we've never substantively addressed the problems that led us to even having to deal with 2020. And yet, and I'd say the same thing, by the way, to Republicans. I got all these people that I know that are Trump supporters, and I'm like, okay, cool, man, more power to you. So anyway, what did he do about that? The system that just screwed him, that y'all swear he got cheated by? Anything been done? Have y'all addressed these voting machines? Have y'all addressed the fact that y'all weren't allowed to audit last time? And yet you probably had a very legitimate case, because I was watching the election all night like everybody else, and it did look a little bit suspect. And some of these cases are coming out, and they're favoring Trump in places like Arizona and in some parts of Georgia that nobody knows about. And none of their media will talk about it because there's a reality that they can get demonetized. And a lot of them people are just cloud chasers, just like we see in the Bernie movement, right? So I keep telling them, like, they're like, man, but Trump, even if he gets arrested, he's going to be more popular than ever, which I believe effectively is true. I think that there are more people willing to vote for Trump than ever before. But Trump increased his voting demographic amongst every single base except for white males. He was the most popular incumbent in history, and he got screwed. And it hasn't been resolved. So I'm like, I tell y'all that people think that I'm like, oh, like you're a grifter. I'm like, no, I say the same thing to people. It's just you don't pay attention when I say it to the Trump people because you ignore those tweets, right? Or you only pay attention when I'm calling your people out because you don't want to hear shit. you don't want to face facts. It's like they don't want to face facts. But as a person who literally had his life threatened because of this lawsuit, they will do any and everything they can to make sure that this system does not change. Because at the end of the day, it's almost like the national debt, right? Or the petrodollar or whatever. They always say we have a sovereign currency. They say, oh, we just can print out money how we want to. I said, no, that's not true. We at least have to look like we have money. You know what I mean? We got to pretend like, oh, yeah, man, we got to make sure it looks like we have some incoming revenue, or else the sham falls apart. It has to look as if, that's why you see all these AOCs and Kamala and Joe Biden, they have a lot of astroturfed accounts because they have to look popular, right? We caught Kamala buying followers during the election. There was a bunch of segments about it. Everybody just kind of forgot it happened. She was not popular. Obviously, Joe Biden was the easiest target. It was very apparent every single debate. And then also we're supposed to be convinced that Biden was the most popular, which is insane to me. And then on top of that, the woman who couldn't even get enough money to make it to the election was the pick for VP because she was supposed to bring more people in that she somehow could never bring herself.
Yep.
That lets you know how corrupt the system is because they already knew what the result would be, so they weren't worried about Kamala hurting them. They weren't worried about Joe Biden literally not being able to form words, hurting them.
No, it's 100% true. For people who aren't aware, like Niko worked on Bernie's first campaign in North Carolina.
I was a state director for North Carolina for the majority of the campaigns in the last month.
Right. You organized a lot of people. And so you saw the potential that the Bernie movement had, even the first time. A lot of people bring up 2020, but the first one, which I consider to be the more revolutionary campaign that he had. Yeah, I thought that was.
There were so many people that would tell me, on the side, mostly like, man, it doesn't feel the same. The campaign doesn't feel the same. Because it was specifically actually when we were in LA and Bernie, he had that massive rally and like a bunch of superstars came out, and like Sarah Silverman, backtracked and was on his jock all this, like, and I was like, man, this was like a rock concert. This is like, Public Enemy came out there. Like it was, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that many people got behind it. But like, I mean, I hate to compare it to like, your favorite indie rock band and rapper. Like, but it felt like, oh man, when I discovered this guy, this is like when the music was pure, basically. And you could see it going mainstream, and just that's how it always goes whenever anything goes mainstream, right? The quality is reduced significantly, even though it may make more money. And what we saw in the quality of the Bernie movement was that even though they were making more money, and people, unfortunately, were making more money off of him, it wasn't the same. Like, it just wasn't the same. And I'm like, there's even less of a likelihood that Bernie actually calls out the cheating, because now he has the ability to wield this movement and get whatever he wants. And at the end of the day, Bernie has much more of an ego than people are willing to admit. Like, Bernie's an old white man. I don't give a damn about how he could be as kind and as generous and talk the talk all he wants to, but like, I know all the things that he did to gain power in Vermont, like crushing independent candidates on behalf of the Democratic Party, which people aren't aware of, or allowing military contractors to build planes in Vermont because he knows that he needs that money to keep his jobs. Instead of say, hey guys, I can't keep these jobs specifically because it's against everything that I stand for when I ran on. And I hope that you all understand it. And if they don't, so be it. He likes the titles. Don't get it twisted. Like, it's almost as if him being that quote unquote independent guy, like, that fulfills the desires of his ego as well. Like, he loves being known as that, but like, bro, but in practice you're not. You vote with the Democratic Party almost 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. So I love what I see, RBN doing. I mean, honestly, specifically Rome, this guy is got like the damn Energizer bunny. This man, doing everything from getting in the streets and giving away pizzas to literally building libraries. Like, we need direct action. We need mutual aid. I feel like the reason that we're so dependent on these elections now is largely because we have this belief that we cannot be saved without the government.
Yep.
And Black people should know by now, the government is not our friend at all. Not even a little bit. Not even kind of. I mean,
we should have learned that from the Black Panthers. I mean, the Black Panthers knew that. They knew the government was not their friend. They knew the government wasn't really going to try to help out their community. That's why they decided to help out the people in the community themselves. And we got away from that as a society, and people embraced neoliberalism and started to think this is the answer, just to vote for someone. And I always ask people, I'm like, would MLK tell you to do that? Would Malcolm X tell you that? What did Malcolm X say about liberals?
Specifically, yeah, he was right on point. And like, I always talk about Fred Hampton because, I mean, you're talking about a 21-year-old Black Panther who, by the way, at least in the history books of the South, we learned about the Black Panthers, but we learned about Huey P. Newton and Angela Davis. That's basically where it stopped. They never even bring up Fred Hampton, at least not when I was in high school, which is bizarre because, like, obviously when I got to about, I think in my first year of college, maybe, I found out, I was like, hold up, this 21-year-old was a co-founder of the Black Panthers? Yeah. And mind you, he was 21 when he died. That wasn't when he founded the Black Panthers. And this man was murdered. He was murdered, and other people were thrown in jail, and other people were killed, and because they were giving food. They were building communities. They were training people to use weapons. Nobody's child went unattended or uncared for when others went to work. Like, everybody ate. If you came looking for food, if you came looking for house, they even had communes, if I'm not mistaken, that people lived in groups, like hostels. So there was never a situation in which you did not have the basic necessities. And this was being done in Black communities where redlining was keeping everybody from owning property that was worth anything. And they still were able to do this. So imagine with, like, obviously we're in tough times right now, but we do, however, have more access to resources and a network that we could flip and turn into resources for other people. But we don't do that because some people are lazy, some people honestly are just tired, right? There's that. I get it. I'm exhausted. I had to take damn near a year off because I was just so beat up from the last 5-6 years. And I understand that. But like, y'all don't think Rome tired? I don't know. Rome might not be tired. Rome got all damn. But okay, bad example. But no, in all seriousness, it's like, yeah, actually, he did a video the other day, literally saying like he needs help.
Yeah.
Which is crazy for Roman to even say something like that, because like, go ahead.
But that's a big part of the problem. Like, people don't really understand that unless you've done it. If you've never canvassed for a politician, if you never knocked on doors, if you never phone banked, if you never like participated in organizing to help someone get elected, it's hard work. And then on top of that,
get home feeling like you just got done running 5 miles. I promise you, it was exhausting. Yes.
And people need to understand too, just to show you how corrupt the system is. Debbie Weiserman Schultz. Okay, so she was a part of all this, all the DNC like rigging against Bernie Sanders. She was a part of all of this. Debbie Weiserman Schultz is still in Congress. She still has a seat.
Yeah, she was fired. She was fired from her job as a DNC chairwoman because she was caught.
And she's still a politician. She's still allowed to be there as a politician. She was actually on the committee for the Twitter files when Matt Taibbi went to the hearing. And I'm like, how is she going to question someone else's integrity? And she was, on DNC chair, and she was caught trying to rig, the primary against Bernie Sanders. So it's just, the system is very corrupt, and it makes me frustrated when people say, so are you guys just telling people not to do anything? It's like
nobody says that.
They totally look over. Like, we tell people do mutual aid, do direct action. They don't even want to say those words because to them, that means do nothing.
Yeah, which is weird, right? It's like, so somebody says, I'm hungry. And I'm like, oh, well, we have some noodles in the cabinet. And somebody's like, oh, so you just don't want me to eat? Hold on, no, I just told you we have food in the cabinet. Like, I know it isn't exactly what you want, but it'll sustain you until we get. Oh, so really, if you don't want me to eat, then just say that. Mm-hmm. No, I'm telling you, that is my only option right now. Otherwise, you're going to starve. We can worry about getting steak after, but otherwise, you're going to starve. You don't eat these noodles. You know what? Fuck it, I'm just not going to eat. You know what? I'm just not going to eat. It's like they literally know at this point, voting will not save them. They know. I don't give it. Like, we have the benefit of hindsight now. We have the benefit of hindsight and technology. And social media has been keeping track of all of this now. And although they try to erase voices like mine, they try to erase Julian Assange. People forget Julian Assange was a large reason as to why Debbie Weiserman Schultz got fired, because WikiLeaks dropped and confirmed damn near everything. Mm-hmm. So that's no coincidence that it was soon after that, within a year or so, Julian Assange was dragged out of that embassy. Like, we have so many people being silenced and smeared and attacked. I mean, hell, even people don't remember TYT completely and totally dismissed the lawsuit. They're like, oh, it's frivolous. They didn't even read it. They didn't even read it. They didn't read anything about it. They even had at the time a journalist who was covering the lawsuit. They wouldn't even interview him about it. So there's a reason that they work so hard, because they don't want you to know, like, yeah, they can cheat, or at least they feel they can cheat because they just got away with it. They don't want you to know that this shit is so deep that we were sent to the Supreme Court for the appeals case, right? And it just waited and waited. We're like, what the hell is taking so long? And I was like, fuck, I know exactly what's taking so long. I'm like, they're waiting for Joe Biden to get the nomination because they're going to give it to the one Republican who owes their career to Joe Biden, which is Clarence Thomas. And guess who gets the case as soon as Joe Biden wins his primary? Clarence Thomas. And so he's going to make sure that Joe Biden's taken care of, because obviously it would look very negative for his campaign if the DNC fraud lawsuit gets through and we're able to shine a light in the discovery phase of the case on everything the DNC had done and everything that they had said.
So Clarence Thomas got the case for the DNC fraud lawsuit?
Out of all the Republicans. Out of all the Republicans in the Supreme Court, yes. He was the deciding factor on whether or not it would be heard by the Supreme Court. And this man literally didn't even read it. He just, nope, sorry.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. That's interesting. See, I didn't know that part about the story, but Roger had a question here. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Didn't the history of the super delegates come out due to McGovern winning the nomination against Nixon, who Dems threw under the bus? Carter was in on it, promised a 1976 run. I didn't know about that.
I heard about that prior. Actually, I want to say my friend Terry Bain actually talks about this on one of our shows. I mean, yeah, they because there was a couple of situations where the Democrats almost lost control, right? The one prior to that would have been Henry Wallace, right? They just had to straight up cheat for that one, which I guess isn't that crazy for Democrats. But like, it's terrifying to me what Democrats will do to maintain power and authority and control. People always ask me, well, why don't you go hard on the Republicans? Which actually I do. People don't. People don't really see. They don't see it unless you're doing. That's all you're doing. They don't see it when you criticize the other side. They only see it when you criticize their own side because it's projection. They feel guilty. They're like, damn, you gonna call me out like that, bro? Yeah, I see it, but shit, we're all supposed to be ignoring it. I thought we all had kind of disagreement that we just weren't gonna talk about the obvious shit. Like, no, I talk about everything. I'm not gonna change that. But we see the Democrats are the ones who keep telling me they care so much about black people. Republicans don't pretend to care about black people. Republicans pretend to care about tokens. I personally have conservative friends who are kind of like, they don't really care for black and white. They literally do not care. To a fault sometimes, but that's just who they are as people because that's how they were raised. But Republicans as a party, they don't give a damn about us. They make it very clear. They don't give a damn about no kind of marginalized, including poor people, right? They make that very, very clear. Democrats are the ones who are pretending to have empathy. Democrats are the ones who are pretending that they care, raising a bunch of money for it, getting in power, and then ultimately doing more damage than Republicans. Yeah, that's what happens.
This piece here, I think, is really crucial too. It says the court continued, for their part, the DNC and Weiserman Schultz have characterized the DNC's charter promise of impartiality and even-handedness as a mere political promise, political rhetoric that is not enforceable in federal courts. The court does not accept this trivialization of the DNC's governing principles. While it may be true in the abstract that the DNC has the right to have its delegates go into back rooms like they used to and smoke cigars and pick the candidate that way, the DNC, through its charter, has committed itself to a higher principle. This piece right here, go into back rooms and pick the candidate. And that's why for me,
that's
it's
Bruce
like...
Spiva, that's what the attorney argued, Bruce Spiva, in the dismissal hearing. He said that those exact words. Just want to clarify that for people.
Yeah, so this is the point. I just want to make this very clear to people, because sometimes people say we're being negative if we're like you should at least try to support, these candidates who are trying to get Joe Biden out. It's not even so much just necessarily about the candidates. It's the system that they're going into. And people have to be willing to acknowledge the fact that the DNC is going to rig it against you. And I feel like,
can we say, Sabby, why don't we got to try to get Joe Biden out? Like, people don't understand. Like, I feel like I'm like crazy sometimes, Sab. I really do. I'm like, hold on. Y'all think that this man actually won in a primary? Like, legitimately? And obviously, so a lot of people like, probably not, at least, right? At least not the neoliberals wouldn't say that, but everybody else would. Like, okay, so if he didn't win legitimately last time, why would that change anything this time? And why are we pretending? Like, because if you want to support the candidate, even if you want to get out and vote just for accountability purposes, which I actually encourage. I'm like, okay, be accountable, because that way because that's what happened with Tim Canova. People went out and voted for Tim Canova. He knew it was going to be rigged, and he used it to his advantage and challenged the courts. And now, what's her name? Brenda Snipes got fired because of it. We were vigilant about it. But that's not what people were asking for. You know what I'm saying? They want you to go spend money, spend time, spend resources. And I saw somebody said that y'all could do both under one of the RBN posts, and the channel itself, RBN channel, was like, no, motherfucker, we don't got the resources for that shit no more. That's over. That shit's dead.
The problem you run into with the both, we'll use the recent example of Workers Strike Back. Mm-hmm. On the same day that Workers Strike Back launched, which they had announced this months ahead of time, Marianne Williamson gave her presidential campaign announcement speech the same day. And what I've seen is that when you try to do those two together, right, the resources that you should be putting towards unionizing, direct action, mutual aid, they end up going to the electoral piece. That's
imagine how many people, like, if we had, like, say if we had taken the literally hundreds of millions of dollars that was given to Bernie, and we had set up, because even before we knew the pandemic was going to be here, let's just say we took that and invested in mutual aid in 2019. And we set up all these different stations around the country to make sure that there was emergency food, there was emergency housing, there were trainings, like classes to grow gardens, things like that. Imagine how many people wouldn't have been struggling during the pandemic if all those things had been pre-set up.
Mm-hmm.
Like
we could have built clinics, Niko.
Yeah. You feel me? We could have bought medicine from out the country. I know a lot of people we had people who literally brought medicine from Mexico because they had the resources to get there. And imagine if we could send a convoy to Mexico. Like, yeah, people say, well, that's difficult. I'm like, no, it wasn't difficult because guess what Bernie could have did? Bernie could have said, one of them text messages that he'd be sending out to everybody, can you spare me $26, what the fuck it is? Yo, can we raise $100 million for mutual aid?
Yep.
As quickly as we raise it for my campaign, can we do the same thing for mutual aid? How many people do you think would have donated? all of his supporters. Absolutely. I would have like, go ahead, bro. You can send me that. Let me know whenever you want to do this shit again. Let me know, and I'm gonna send more money. Matter of fact, let me know where I can volunteer. How many? He had tens of thousands of volunteers. Hey, we're setting up these mutual aid banks. Can you volunteer at this, just like you did for my campaign? Only for a couple hours a week, and we could change the world. We could change the country.
Yep.
He did not do that. In fact, all these people with these platforms, TYT obviously had the ability to bring attention to what happened to Bernie. They chose not to. That wasn't by coincidence. Like Crystal and Sagar with their show, like there were so many people who have the power to not only bring attention to what happened negatively, obviously, but take the energy that they literally profited to the tune of millions from, in some cases, and redirect that into positive action so that all of that wasn't for a loss. But we're now in debt as a movement. We are indebted. We don't have the resources anymore. People are done. They're tired. So now everybody they're very skeptical. They're very suspicious, as they should be. And the new people who do have the resources that are excited, those resources are now about to be sucked up again by Marianne Williamson and obviously probably Joe Biden. And we're seeing our whole being dug deeper. That is one thing like I've just never been able to forgive Bernie for. Like, yeah, you could have turned around and taken your movement and literally set the country up for success in a way that we have never seen really since the Black Button. He could have did what the Black Panthers started and help people build this infrastructure and unite people. Like, hey, we know it just all you have to do is we know the election wasn't fair. That's all we have to say. You don't have to go into details. We know the election wasn't fair, but that doesn't mean that it was all for naught. Let's take the energy and let's do this, and this. And I'll go to each thing, and I'll go personally to volunteer here. And you can take pictures with me. You can do this, X, Y, and Z. I'll get these other Congress people or these other celebrities, etc., to come and go to these different. Like there are so many ways that we could have weaponized that movement for good. And we completely lost all the energy, and it's mostly his fault. Almost completely.
Also, too, not even just that, but you're right. Like we had the numbers. When people say we should have had a mass movement, they say we don't have. We have the numbers. We have the numbers where Bernie could have taken that movement and say, okay, we need to push back. We need to fight back. But Bernie Sanders was never going to do that because in the beginning they have to pledge. They have to sign a pledge.
Well, that was for 2020.
Right.
That wasn't for 2016, but that was because of 2016 that they signed that pledge in 2020.
There you go, that they'll support the Democrat nominee, right? But here's the thing. When Jesse Ventura came on, Jesse Ventura said he asked Bernie Sanders early on when he announced his 2016 run, if you lose to Hillary Clinton, would you be willing to build a third party movement with me? And Jesse Ventura said that Bernie Sanders said, no, I will be supporting Hillary Clinton. So see, here's the thing. If I knew that back then, I would have never donated money to Bernie Sanders. I would have never done it, because then he took that energy and then he told everybody, okay, we got to go support Hillary Clinton. Then he did it twice.
He poured water into a volcano. He poured water into a volcano, literally. He was like, oh, I'm going to put out this. Oh, the water's gone. Shit. Like, bro, it's Hillary Clinton. We were not going to her. After we all found out, we found out they cheated him, and she was the culprit, obviously, and everybody was doing it on behalf of her. And then Bernie was like, "Yeah, no, she literally screwed all of us, because that's the reason Trump won. Bernie wins, Trump doesn't win." I don't like that's for sure. Think about how many people that we know that were Bernie supporters that are now vehemently supporting Trump to this day. Because they're in their mind, they're like, "Shit, he ain't perfect." Because Bernie, you make the same claim about Bernie. He's not perfect, but at least he fucking fought more than Bernie did. He's like, shit, at least he pushed back. At least he did it. At least he made me feel like I was seen. That's how a lot of people feel. Bernie, he abandoned, like that's the best word I could use to think, like I think up to you, excuse me. He abandoned us. And it's everybody talks about, I don't give a damn about the book deal and all that. Like, I don't think he really cared that much about the money, despite what some people say. I said, but he does care about the clout. He wants to go down in history as this guy that apparently isn't. But he's okay with being in history book says, man, this guy almost did something great, as long as he was mentioned. And he wants to be known as independent.
But the thing is, too, he never mentions this, Niko. As many people that have interviewed Bernie Sanders, even when Bernie Sanders came on to Crystal Kyle and Friends and told Kyle, basically said he wouldn't do it if Kyle was president. Okay. So this is how politicians work, because you spend all those years telling people to support Bernie Sanders' campaign, praising Bernie Sanders. Then the opportunity comes for Bernie Sanders to do the interview on the show. And Bernie Sanders says, I won't do it, or I will do it with Crystal, but not if Kyle is there.
Which is weird.
All those years.
Because Kyle gave him a softball ass interview before.
But the thing is that there was criticism after 2020. There was some criticism on Secular Talk about Bernie Sanders.
No, of course. I remember.
Why.
But my thing was though, like, so basically you're asserting that like a very very little criticism that Kyle gave Bernie, like that was too much. But you know that like Chris is going to do whatever the hell you tell her to, and therefore you're okay with being interviewed. Like that's like if Kyle is too much for you, Bernie, that you're not a serious candidate and you're extremely disingenuous, and you are worried that your disingenuity will be called out.
But my thing is too, if you get the opportunity and you're in, indie media, you get the opportunity to interview Bernie Sanders, you should bring up the DNC fraud lawsuit. Bernie Sanders, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about what Debbie Weiserman Schultz did? How do you feel? Nobody asked him about this. He doesn't talk about it. Bernie Sanders isn't even willing to criticize the media, the way that they treated him when he ran for president, how they smeared him. He's not willing to push back on that. He didn't push back on the way that Hillary Clinton smeared him and continues to smear him
till this day.
Till this
day, bro. Like, this man has done everything. It makes you think like this man Bernie's going to therapy, so I guess it's too late for that. But like, bro, like it's like he takes pleasure in getting ridiculed and attacked, and like Elizabeth Warren literally lied on him, like lied.
Yep.
Like got caught lying in real time, and it's okay. That's just Liz.
Like, we're all just supposed to forget that Elizabeth Warren called him sexist or misogynist and said, like, during the 2020 debates, I'm like, oh, so that don't matter anymore. You guys are friends? You're not going to correct that, Bernie?
But, when you're all thespians in the grand theater of politics, I guess you just know when the actor's acting. I got to get out of here soon, though, in like 5 minutes. So just want to let you know.
All right. Oh, yeah. I'm looking at the time. But before you go, Niko, tell everybody, like, what are you working on now? And why did you move to Brazil?
Well, Brazil's awesome. But so I actually am here to kind of check out the developments of what takes place after now that Lula's back in power. Given the status of the U.S. dollar in the United States and the world in general, and then the up-and-coming BRICS empire, if you will, because that shit is happening. I don't know if people have been paying attention, but like it is real. The dollar's actually lost value here a little. It goes up and down, but like it actually lost by like, I want to say 15 to 20% of its value over the last 3 weeks because of that deal with China that Brazil had. And then when Lula went to China recently, like 3 days ago, like it dropped by like another 10 to 15 cents. There is going to be hopefully a lot of positive outcomes here for Brazilians. And this is the best, I mean, out of all the BRICS nations, like this is the only language I speak. So, so I wanted to cover it and I wanted to be on the ground for it. I really wanted to get a feel for how Brazilians feel, or like somebody from a BRICS country actually feels about what's taking place and seeing the actual impact. And also, like, I just did not want to be in the U.S. anymore, to be honest with you. Like, it just happened to be I love Brazil at the same time, but I had already been looking at moving to Mexico potentially. Like, it just, the U.S. is just like, I'm like, at the end of the day, like, I have a family that I have to take care of. I'm trying to figure out where my mom will retire. My mom's exhausted. She's ready to, like, and she knows, like, at the rate it's looking right now, but my mom was finally actually ready to retire. We know how this game goes. Unfortunately, her 401k is going to be worth shit because the market is going to be destroyed, and then she's going to have to work longer. So it's really the combination of work stuff and also just looking for alternatives to help my family and getting, and hopefully actually just, I try to do whatever I can to just help people out here, man. You know, I definitely got some of that American guilt going on. I definitely do. Because I'm fully aware that the lack of privilege that they have is directly due to the fact that we stopped them from having it. We go out of our way. The U.S. crushes Brazil's economy in various ways. We, obviously facilitated the arrest of the legitimate and unjust arrest of Lula. Like, I'm fully aware of it. So, I buy food for people all the time. I bought food for a family, like literally like 3 days ago while I was at a restaurant. I bought shoes, groceries for people, things like that. And it's dope, honestly. Like, it's great because, like, you would think that, because they know how America is, but they never hold Americans accountable for what America, quote unquote, the government does. And that's just like, I wish that Americans had the self-awareness that people in these other countries do. So also I have a podcast coming out, For the People podcast. The only reason it actually hasn't come out yet is mostly because, well, I'm still waiting on my desk and things actually take a little bit longer to get to your house in Brazil, which I'm finding out. So their postal service is actually right on par with the US's. You might get it that day. They might lie and said they tried you and they really didn't. They didn't pull up at all, but it's what it is. I can't just go to the store. I don't have a car here, so I can't just go to the store and pick it up. So that's what we're going to work with. But For the People podcast is going to be on Hotspot Media's YouTube. And I'm still on Twitter, obviously, still on TikTok. But yeah, so obviously the election is ramping up, and I'm going to be definitely covering a lot of the election, but mostly from the perspective that I normally cover it in. And I'm definitely going to be calling out a lot of the hypocrisy as usual. But I want to definitely focus more on this. The international stage is like, it's just, for me, I feel like it's not coincidental that the election is happening when the world is fucking burning around us. Like, a lot of this stuff is getting implemented right now. AI, like this damn AI situation is kind of like went from 0 to 100 real quick, and we're all kind of just like acting very casual about shit. I'm on Instagram. I literally was on Instagram the other day, Sabs, and I was listening to an AI bot sing other people's songs in Kanye West's voice. Like,
that's scary.
What the fuck, bro? Like, that's not okay. And BuzzFeed just fired a bunch of people, and their stocks went up because of AI, which is, I mean, who the fuck reads BuzzFeed anyway? Whatever, cool. But my point is, if you can fire people and your stocks go up, what does that mean for other companies? What does that mean for other employees? Right? And they're gonna be like, oh, learn how to code. Okay, what happens when AI learns how to code? Yeah. Which I'm sure it does. For the most, obviously it does, or else it wouldn't be able to diminish. So like, these are the chips in the brain whole situation. Like, that's the thing that's happening. the situation with these, like, for example, like at least in Europe, they're putting vaccines in food products without our knowledge and sending them over to the US. Like, that's happening in real time. There are people who have actually been coming up with like remnants, testing pilots for remnants of the COVID vaccine, and they've never taken it. Like, that's been happening recently. So the world is literally burning around us. They're poisoning our food. They're poisoning our minds. I saw this guy Maj Tour from Black Guns Matter. He was like, there's really a whole business built around shortening our attention spans. Whether it be from social media, whether it be from work, like, you just get so stressed that you can really only afford the mental and emotional energy to pay attention to something for a small amount of time.
Yep.
Like, it's sad. So I definitely, I don't think it's coincidence that this election is happening as a bunch of fuckery, excuse my language, is being pushed. And so with my new podcast, my goal is to kind of touch on literally everything and show how it's all interconnected, and to bring attention to it in a way that's hopefully a little bit, lighthearted and fun. But, the situation is dire, right? Like, as much fun as I try to have, the situation is dire, and it's not a game. Like, I wish I could. I literally had this conversation with my mom, and how black parents are. I feel like, man, you'd be all right, because black people have damn near seen everything at this point. So it's very hard to scare black people, right? It is, I'm telling you. But like, now my mom, because now, like, even when she makes a raise, she's losing money. Which is correct. Her medicine costs more, her deductibles cost more, the taxes cost more. She's like really starting to kind of figure out, like, damn, this is a problem. Like, do we have a backup plan? Oldest son comes to the rescue like I normally do, so it's all good. But like, y'all have to teach yourself skills. Y'all need to get yourselves passports. If you like, I don't know how long this American privilege is gonna last, y'all. Right now, you don't need a visa to Brazil. You don't need a visa to go to Colombia. You don't need a visa to go to Mexico, Ecuador, places like that. But you will soon, because they know y'all run away. They know y'all are looking to run away, bro. They really do. Like, they're not stupid. Everybody, all the politicians in Central South America rubbing their hands like, oh boy, it's about to get real. There's gonna be a lot of parity when it comes to the economy. Now, it might not be in our lifetime, like the way we at least hopefully. And I say hopefully because if it is in our lifetime, America will fucking set this bitch off before they allow that shit to happen. They will start World War III. They're already in the process of doing so. If you know your history, how they started lying about all the things that China's doing, like, oh, it's a balloon. The balloon's fine on it. It's like, no, bitch, no, it wasn't. It was not a balloon. That's what they did to Germany. They did that to Germany in World War I. Like, the Lusitania was a lie. It was a total lie. They do that to set the stage so that they can court approval from you. Now, y'all have the choice whether or not you want to fight in that war at the end of the day, right? And so y'all have a lot of choices, actually. Y'all have a choice of whether you want to vote. You have a choice of whether or not you want to do direct action and mutual aid. You have a choice of whether or not you want to put up with this shit. So at that point, that's on you. But you got to get off the bench and get in the game somehow, some way. And you'll know how you can do that. And no, I don't mean go sign up for a fucking campaign. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can literally do what Rome did. Go out and buy food for people on the street and hand it out. And somebody's going to see that. They're going to be like, damn, why the hell did I do that? That's not even that expensive. Shit, I'm going to do the same thing. And then you meet up with other like-minded people. And then y'all start something bigger. That's what we need. Like, we don't need more TikTok stars. We don't need more independent, media people. We got way too many motherfuckers as it is. Most of them are not that good. To be honest with you, most of them are not that good. Everybody ain't RBN. Everybody ain't Niko house or the combo couch. Most of them just fucking talk to hear themselves talk because they're not going to tell y'all the real shit. Like, we could be as big as well, I don't know. I didn't, go steal somebody's wife worth millions of dollars. So maybe you can't be as big as Kyle Kalinske and Crystal, but you can grow. You can grow your network from doing what you're doing as far as mutual aid is concerned, and like make that thing independent media, bro. Make everybody want to compete to be the next best mutual aid networker. That's what we need at the end of the day. So appreciate you, Sabs.
Thanks so much, Niko.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Bye.